The Riddle of the Earth, Chapter 1. The Tokyo Earthquake, 1923. The Tokyo earthquake occurred suddenly, the only warning being an intense oppressiveness beforehand. It came in the form of a dozen vertical 4-inch wave movements, and these shocks continued intermittently for a week. A conflagration simultaneously followed the earthquake in both Tokyo and Yokohama, which broke out not in one spot but everywhere. In the former city, 350,000 houses were destroyed mainly by fire, and 130,000 casualties resulted. The conflagration was attributed to gases released from the earth. The next affliction was a tremendous downpour of rain which lasted for several days and deluged the areas. An enormous tidal wave destroyed many coast towns, and 4 tidal waves crossed the Pacific Ocean, struck the Californian coast 4,750 miles distant from the point of impact, and broke small boats from their bearings. Islands off Yokohama were submerged, and the island of Oshima, it was said, sank into the sea and reappeared larger than before with a volcano in full eruption. Fujiyama, the Japanese volcano to the west of Tokyo, it is interesting to note, was unaffected. The theory of the Central Observatory of Tokyo was that the earthquake originated in a landslip undersea, halfway between the Atami hot springs and Oshima Island. Mr. Shaw, the British seismologist, was also of opinion, I think that should be was also of the opinion, that the earthquake had its origin under the sea off the coast of Japan, where the strata slopes deeply down into the Pacific to the Tuscarora Deep, thus giving a formation, quote, peculiar oh, can't say this, peculiarly, there we go, favourable to earthquakes. That's a hard one to say, peculiarly. Gonna have to work on that. The theory of a landslide at a considerable depth under the ocean fails to account for the circumstances in almost every particular. It does not explain, assuming for the moment that the earthquake was due to a submarine landslide, A, why the atmosphere was sultry and oppressive beforehand at Tokyo lying inland, B, why the full force of the quake shook Tokyo first, 70 miles north from the alleged centre of disturbance, C, why it created a conflagration and a subsequent downpour in Tokyo, D, why the force of the quake was not felt at its alleged focus, E, why such a large landslide not only did not absorb the Japanese islands but recreated Oshima with a volcano, and some accounts add other new islands along with volcanic cones. F, why it could cause such an immense tidal wave that its effects were felt nearly 5,000 miles away. A further objection could be raised of itself sufficient to destroy this theory, namely that the earthquake followed a trajectory from north to south. It began at Tokyo and ended in the Japan Sea. This fact is very important because the accepted theory of earthquakes, as of volcanic eruptions, is that there is some fracture or fault in the Earth's crust, that it adjusts itself to correct the fracture, and hence the earthquake. In such circumstances, the effects might be expected to be felt not within a definite and specified track, in this case, and as almost invariably from north to south, but as radiating in all directions from a common centre. Again, we can instance the common examples of a stone striking and breaking a pane of glass. It causes fissures and fractures in all directions. The Tokyo earthquake followed a line of meridian from the north, and its area or crack was sharply circumscribed along a linear course.